Hello, traveler. Maybe you've noticed this before. While some people count down the days to their birthday with genuine excitement, others would prefer that day to simply pass in silence. No cake, no singing, no big celebration. And this is interesting, isn't it? Because birthdays, in theory, are days designed for us to celebrate life itself, the cycle of a person's existence, the fact that they're here. But what does it really mean when someone doesn't feel any desire to celebrate? Is it discouragement? Is it detachment? Or could it be something deeper? Something connected to how their brain learned to deal with time, with emotions, with expectations. And that brings us to today's lesson. We're going to look carefully at this theme and understand what is really going on with people who prefer to ignore their own birthday. So come with me. First thing, some people don't celebrate their birthday because deep down they don't feel celebrated. This might sound simple, but this sentence carries enormous pain. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a child who, year after year, gets excited about their birthday approaching. They build it up in their mind. They imagine how special it is going to be. But then they end up frustrated because nobody remembers, or because the party doesn't turn out how they hoped, or because the people they wanted most to be there simply don't show up. They're absent. They forget. They have something better to do. These repeated experiences generate something that psychology calls learned helplessness, a concept developed by Martin Seligman in the 1970s. Learned helplessness is the mental state a person enters after experiencing repeated disappointments or rejections. They begin to believe that there is no point in creating positive expectations because those expectations will just be crushed again. The thought process becomes, if nobody cared the other times, why would they care now? What makes this year any different? It is a form of self-protection. The brain, trying to avoid pain, simply shuts down the expectation mechanism. It disconnects hope as a survival strategy. And so, traveler, little by little, the date that should symbolize affection and recognition becomes a silent reminder that, in the past, the love didn't come. The care wasn't there, and that absence carved itself into memory. And there is more to this. Studies in emotional neuroscience show us something profound. The human brain reacts to social rejection in the same way it reacts to physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex, an area linked to processing pain, activates in the exact same way whether you take a punch to the gut or you are excluded from a group. The same neural pathways light up. In other words, not being remembered, being forgotten on your birthday, that is not just an emotional inconvenience. It genuinely hurts. It registers as real pain in your nervous system. And when this happens multiple times, when the pattern repeats itself year after year, the mind learns not to expect anything. It learns not to want. It even learns to pretend it doesn't care, to put on a mask of indifference. So ignoring your own birthday, in this case, isn't disinterest. It is not apathy. It is a type of scar. It is the way that person found to keep their heart protected, to build walls so the disappointment can't reach them anymore. But emotional wounds aren't always behind this pattern. Sometimes what exists instead is overload. Pure, exhausting overload. The modern world seems to spin at an absurd velocity, doesn't it? Work, school, children, bills to pay, responsibilities stacking on responsibilities. Our brains live in survival mode, with cortisol. That is the stress hormone, constantly elevated, and our biological clocks completely scrambled. There is a phenomenon studied in neuropsychology called time blindness. It is precisely this, the difficulty some people have in perceiving the passage of days, especially those living under constant pressure or suffering from mental fatigue. In other words, the brain becomes so intensely focused on solving daily problems, on putting out fires, on just getting through the next hour, that it loses sight of special occasions entirely. They slip past unnoticed. So, in this accelerated routine, a birthday can end up becoming just another date on the calendar. And it is not that the person doesn't want to celebrate. They simply don't have the mental energy for it anymore. Because dopamine, that is the neurotransmitter linked to motivation and the anticipation of pleasure, it stays at very low levels when the brain is exhausted. And without dopamine, celebrating loses its shine. The prospect of a party, of planning, of social interaction, it all just feels like more work, more demands, more things to manage. But there is also another group of people, and this one is particularly interesting. These are people who know perfectly well it is their birthday, but they feel absolutely no need to celebrate it. And here there is no pain. There is no exhaustion. What exists instead is something called emotional independence. These people have learned to find meaning and satisfaction within themselves. They don't depend on external validation, on applause, on presents, on social media posts, to feel valued. To many people, this might even seem like a lack of emotion, like coldness, but for them, it is a form of maturity. It is a choice, a conscious decision about how they want to engage with the world. From a psychological perspective, this type of behavior is indeed linked to a high degree of emotional self-efficacy. And what is that exactly? It is quite simple, actually. It is the capacity to trust your own emotions without needing external reinforcement. These people don't see their birthday as a social event. They see it as a symbolic date, something introspective, almost meditative in nature. For them, the real gift isn't a party or material things. It is self-knowledge. It is serenity. It is the simple fact that they're at peace with who they are, and that in itself is celebration enough. That internal alignment, that sense of being comfortable in their own skin, that is worth more than any gathering or any stack of presents. This previous point connects directly with something called self-determination theory, which was developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. According to this theory, true human well-being comes from three pillars: autonomy, competence, and belonging. Emotionally mature people tend to value the first pillar most, autonomy. They seek meaning in their own choices rather than in social rituals or external expectations. This doesn't mean they don't appreciate affection or connection. It means they don't require it. They don't need it as proof of their worth. When someone chooses not to celebrate their birthday, they might simply be expressing this autonomy. The thought process is, I decide how I want to live my day. I get to choose what feels right for me. And this choice, far from being cold or detached, is profoundly conscious. Because emotional maturity lies in recognizing your own value without needing external proof. It is understanding that the cake and the candles are symbols, yes, but they're not the measure of a life well lived. Sometimes the greatest gift is simply being able to choose silence, rest, introspection, being able to spend your day exactly as you wish, without performance, without obligation. And that, in a way, is also a celebration. It is just a quiet one, a private one. So the next time someone tells you they don't want to celebrate their birthday, maybe it is worth looking at them with more empathy, with more curiosity rather than judgment. Because behind that statement of, I don't care about parties or I am not into birthdays, there might exist a story of pain, wounds that haven't fully healed, or there might be exhaustion, a nervous system stretched too thin, or there might be self-knowledge, a person who has found their center and doesn't need external ceremonies to affirm it. Not every silence is sadness. Sometimes silence is healing. Sometimes it is the space where recovery happens. Not every absence is coldness. Sometimes absence is maturity, is choosing yourself, is setting boundaries that protect your peace, and not every detachment is loneliness. Sometimes detachment is freedom, liberation from expectations that never served you anyway. Celebrating your own birthday doesn't need to be mandatory. It doesn't have to be a performance you put on for others. What matters is how you feel inside. Maybe the true meaning of your birthday isn't throwing a party. Maybe it is making sense of your life, of your journey, of everything you've become. And if your way of celebrating is simply to be at peace, to breathe deeply, to quietly acknowledge everything you've survived and overcome, then congratulations. You are celebrating in the most beautiful way that exists. You are celebrating with your truth, your own personal truth, not anyone else's version of what celebration should look like. Stay safe, traveler. I'll see you on our next journey.